Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
If your family forgot your birthday 27 years in a row, would you even bother reminding them the 28th? I used to think maybe I would. Maybe I should, just in case they simply overlooked it like someone might forget to buy milk on a grocery run. But over time, you start to realize that you are not the milk, you are the unpaid bill left under the stack of coupons on the kitchen counter, gathering dust and good intentions until even those are forgotten. Birthdays for me were like that, a passing nod, a grunt in the hallway, a text that arrived 2 days late, if it arrived at all. I remember being 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with a single store-bought cupcake plopped in front of me, a sad swirl of icing already sliding sideways. My mom, Linda, breezed by, her arms full of decorations for Jason's party that weekend, ruffling my hair with a distracted, "Happy birthday, sweetie," as she checked her watch and yelled for Jason to come pick his party theme. He chose dinosaurs that year, big green balloons shaped like T-Rexes, papier-mâché volcanoes spewing candy all over the backyard. I had my cupcake and the silence, broken only by the sound of tape ripping as my mom stuck another banner on the wall that would stay up long after my birthday had faded from memory. Dad was no better. Ron was the kind of man who thought being a father meant showing up for the big moments, but only if there was a crowd to applaud. He smiled so wide at Jason's parties that you would think the kid had cured cancer, not just turned 12 with a new PlayStation and a pile of cash cards from relatives who knew better than to buy the wrong thing for the favorite child. For me, birthdays were more like potholes, something he swerved around, pretending he just had not seen it coming. I should have said something. I know that. It is what every therapist would have told me if I had ever bothered to spill my guts on a couch somewhere. Speak your truth, they say. You have to advocate for yourself, they say. But what good is advocating when you are already standing in a courtroom where the verdict has been decided before you even open your mouth? Every year, I swallowed it down, shoved it somewhere deep where it could not spoil the fake smiles I pasted on my face during Jason's endless celebrations. It became a pattern so predictable you could set your watch by it. First, the Facebook invites for Jason's parties would roll in, getting bigger and glitzier with every year. Then the family group texts would light up, everybody chiming in about cakes and themes and how Jason deserves the best. Meanwhile, my birthday would slink by like a stray cat nobody wanted to make eye contact with, a bump in the road, something to get past so the real party planning could start. I think the worst year was when I turned 30. 30 feels important somehow, like maybe the universe should pause and hand you a balloon or a beer or at least a half-hearted congratulations, you are not dead yet. But that year, Jason got engaged. His fiancée, Brittany, planned a surprise party for him at the local country club, complete with fireworks and an ice sculpture shaped like a damn lion, because Jason's a Leo, get it? I spent the day curled up on my couch, watching a marathon of crime shows, eating leftover Chinese food straight from the box, because even I could not pretend anymore that someone was going to call. Not even a drunk dial from Dad after 3 bourbons. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a little voice always whispered that maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year, they would remember. Maybe this year, they would look at me and not see a supporting character in Jason's highlight reel. But you can only bang your head against a locked door so many times before you get tired of the bruises. This year, when the calendar rolled toward my birthday, I did not remind anyone. I did not hint or send myself flowers to the house like I had once, desperately trying to stir some guilt into their dead-eyed neglect. I just waited. Quietly. Patiently. I watched as the group chat exploded over Jason's plans for his 42nd birthday bash, catered barbecue, live band, a magician for the kids, and nobody even noticed the silence hanging where my day should have been. Not a word. Not a card. Not a text. Not even a damn Facebook notification from the cousin who likes every post that breathes. But this year, I had a plan. It started 6 months ago, not that they knew. While they were busy planning Jason's 50th party for the future, I was working late nights, pulling double shifts, saying yes to every miserable project that nobody else wanted. I racked up overtime hours until my eyeballs burned, until my back ached, until my bank account started to look like something that could buy more than survival. My boss called me into her office one Tuesday afternoon, said some nonsense about valuing my dedication, and handed me a bonus check that made my hands shake when I opened it. I looked at that number, huge, impossible, and for a long minute I did not breathe. It felt like a mistake, a joke, a prank call from the universe. After all, people like me do not get windfalls. We get leftovers. We get apologies made with a shrug. But there it was, as real as the scar on my knee from falling off my bike at Jason's 10th birthday when nobody noticed, because he was busy blowing out the candles on his custom-made Batman cake. I realized in that moment that I could do something I had never done before. I could do something just for me. No apologies. No second guessing. No invitations sent to people who would only come out of obligation. I could make my own party, even if it was a party of one. And so, the plan was born. It grew quietly, like a vine creeping along a forgotten wall, weaving itself into my days and nights until it became a certainty instead of a fantasy. For once, I was going to celebrate myself on my terms, without waiting for scraps from a table I was never really invited to sit at. I just needed to keep my mouth shut a little while longer. Let them forget me one more time. Let them plan Jason's bash with their usual deafening enthusiasm. Let them show me exactly where I stood, one last time. Because while they were laughing over cake and balloons and whatever new shiny thing Jason wanted this year, I was going to be somewhere else entirely. Somewhere they could not reach. The morning of my birthday came not with a bang or a whisper, but with the soft mechanical hum of my phone buzzing on the nightstand, a small and pitiful sound that somehow filled the whole empty room. I rolled over, blinking against the heavy morning light slicing through the cheap blinds, and picked it up with the grim certainty of someone checking a scratch-off ticket they already knew was a loser. No texts. No missed calls. No emails titled "Happy Birthday" with too many exclamation points and a stock photo of balloons. Just the usual spam and one bank notification I almost swiped away without reading. Except the amount caught my eye, and for a second I genuinely thought there had been a glitch or a cosmic typo because there was no earthly reason why $18,000 should have landed in my sad little checking account overnight. My heart stuttered, then dropped into my stomach with a sickening lurch, because panic comes before hope when you are not used to good things happening. I sat up so fast that the covers tangled around my legs and nearly pitched me off the bed, fumbling to open the full email and reread it, sure there was a hidden catch. It took 3 tries and a full cup of bitter coffee before I realized I had misread it the first time. Not 18,000. 80,000. 80,000 real, legal American dollars deposited courtesy of a performance bonus I had forgotten my company even mentioned back in the chaotic mess that had been the first quarter. Apparently, working double shifts, taking on projects no one else would touch with a 10-foot pole, and pulling off 2 major client saves had finally paid off in a way more tangible than a polite email and a $15 Starbucks card. I sat there in my threadbare pajamas, hair sticking up in 100 directions, staring at the screen until my vision blurred, half expecting the numbers to rearrange themselves into something more reasonable, more miserable, more fitting of the life I had come to expect. But the number stayed stubbornly large, bright and solid as a brick to the face, daring me to believe it was real. For a brief, foolish minute, the old reflex kicked in, the one that whispered, maybe you should tell them. Maybe you should call Dad and hear the awkward pride creak out of his throat like a door off rusty hinges. Maybe you should tell Mom and wait for that brittle laugh that meant she was calculating how it could benefit Jason somehow. Maybe you should mention it in the family group chat and count the seconds before Jason turned it into a joke about finally pulling your weight. The thought died a quick and painless death. No, this was mine. This tiny miracle, this improbable sliver of light, belonged to me and only me. I owed them nothing. No explanations, no invitations, no half-hearted offers to share the spoils like some conquered territory. They had made it clear year after year that I was a guest in my own bloodline, and guests do not owe their hosts a damn thing when they finally find their own way home. The idea bloomed in my mind slowly, cautiously, like a battered animal creeping out of hiding. A vacation house. A real one. Not the dusty dream that had floated around family dinners when we still pretended to like each other, when Dad would say, "Someday we'll get a place at the lake," and Mom would nod like she believed it, and Jason would immediately demand the biggest bedroom. No, this would be mine. No shared keys. No weekends ruined by fake smiles and real resentment. Just a quiet little cabin by the water, where I could sit on the porch and breathe air that had not been poisoned by decades of second-class status. I spent the next 2 weeks in a daze, calling real estate agents, combing through listings, making appointments I kept secret from everyone. It felt like an affair, thrilling and slightly shameful, like I was betraying a family that had already left me behind years ago. Each time I walked through a property, running my hands over rough wooden banisters and creaking old floorboards, I felt a piece of myself start to stitch back together in ways I had almost forgotten were possible. It was not easy. Most of the places were either depressing or wildly out of my budget, even with the bonus padding my account like a secret weapon. I began to wonder if I had been foolish, if I was reaching for something that was always going to be just out of my grasp, like everything else. But then I found it. A modest cabin on the less touristy side of the lake, nestled among pines and maples, with a crooked dock that leaned into the water like an old man offering a handshake. It had 2 bedrooms, a fireplace, and a screened-in porch where the late afternoon sun turned the world gold. It was not perfect. The roof needed work. The kitchen was a relic of the 80s, all linoleum and brass fixtures. But it was mine the moment I saw it. Mine in a way no house, no room, no seat at any table had ever been. I made an offer the same day, my hands trembling only a little as I signed the papers and handed over the deposit check. The closing date landed squarely on my birthday, as if the universe had decided to stop playing coy and finally deliver something worth celebrating. I stood there on the cracked front steps, clutching the keys, listening to the wind rattle through the trees and the lazy lapping of the lake against the dock. No balloons. No cake. No one singing an off-key rendition of Happy Birthday to me while thinking about someone else. Just me. Just the trees and the water and the house that did not care who loved me less or more. And for the first time in a long, long while, I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. Because this year, the party was mine, and I had finally given myself the best gift of all, freedom. The evening slipped over the city like an old coat, worn and dragging at the edges, the kind of night that smelled like wet pavement and distant barbecues, while the sky bruised itself into deep navy and purple above the broken skyline outside my apartment window. I sat there in my living room, legs tucked under me on the ratty old couch, half a glass of warm boxed wine sloshing lazily in one hand, my phone gripped too tightly in the other. Watching the notifications stack up like a slap in the face that just kept landing again and again. Jason's birthday bash had started around 4 in the afternoon, according to the avalanche of Facebook posts that had begun pouring in, each one louder and more self-congratulatory than the last. A bright, shiny carousel of catered food, balloon arches, rented DJ gear, and crowd shots of people with plastic smiles frozen mid-laughter, everyone acting like they had just been invited to the goddamn Oscars. The worst part was how proud they all looked, how natural it seemed for them to come together under fairy lights and white tents to celebrate my brother as if he were some kind of local hero returning from battle, while I sat alone in my tiny, overheated apartment, invisible as a ghost in a crowded room. It's funny how much louder silence gets when everybody else is cheering. I mean, the noise from their end of the world was practically deafening. Hashtags like #BestBrotherEver and #JasonRocks cluttered every caption, pictures of him grinning with cake smeared on his face, his arm around Mom. Dad giving him a proud slap on the back like they had just won the lottery instead of thrown the same damn party they had thrown every year since the earth cooled. They had a magician this year too, for the kids, because apparently nothing says happy 42nd like a guy in a rented tuxedo pulling dollar bills out of ears and badly trained doves out of top hats. Nobody, not a single solitary soul, had posted a word about my birthday. Not one joke, not one "oh by the way," not even one half-assed acknowledgement that the day they were all gathered to celebrate Jason's greatness also happened to mark the day their second child was quietly born and just as quietly forgotten. I scrolled and scrolled, the cheap wine curling warm and mean in my stomach, each photo like a punch that I braced for and still somehow never saw coming. I could have driven down there if I had wanted to, crashed the party in a swirl of bitter laughter and boxed wine breath, made some sort of half-heroic, half-pathetic stand that would have been forgotten as quickly as my birthday always was. I could have called, texted, begged for an invite, pretended like I didn't mind, like I didn't see them all grinning under the tent without me, but I didn't. I stayed exactly where I was, feeling the ache settle deeper into my bones, familiar and heavy as an old winter coat. When the bitterness finally swelled up high enough to choke me, I set the wine glass down with a clumsy thunk on the scratched coffee table, wiped my mouth on the back of my hand, and opened my phone's camera. Not the front-facing one. I wasn't in the mood to look at the red-rimmed eyes and flattened hair that the evening had left me with, but the gallery, the shiny new photos I had taken just a few hours earlier at the lake house. There was the porch, worn and wonderful, basking in the soft late afternoon sun like an old dog asleep on a rug. There was the dock, lurching out into the water, catching the last orange glints of sunset like a net full of fireflies. There was the bottle of cheap champagne I had bought just for the occasion, cracked open with trembling fingers and held up to the sky in a silent toast to nobody but myself. Without really thinking about it, I picked one of the best photos, the view from the porch. The lake stretched out endless and peaceful beyond the cracked wooden railing, and posted it. No caption, no explanation, just a snapshot of something they could not touch, could not fake, could not steal or dismiss or overshadow with their party tricks and catered barbecue. Then, on a reckless impulse, I added another one, the champagne glass, half full, held up against the blazing streaks of sunset, a quiet middle finger disguised as a celebration. I hit post and tossed the phone onto the couch like it had burned my hand. For a few long, dragging minutes, I just sat there, listening to the steady tick of the clock over the stove, the faint thrum of traffic 3 stories below, the distant shriek of somebody's kid in the alley behind the building. I told myself it did not matter, that it was done, that I did not care if they saw it or not, if they asked questions or just kept pretending I was background noise to the Jason show. But then the phone buzzed. Once, then twice. Then so many times in rapid succession that it skittered a few inches across the worn fabric of the couch, the screen lighting up again and again with notification after notification, flooding faster than I could even register. And just like that, the silence I had lived with for so long cracked wide open. The notifications did not stop buzzing, not after the first frantic bursts, not even after I powered my phone off and stared at the dark, lifeless screen sitting there like a brick on the table, daring me to pick it back up and face whatever fresh hell waited inside it. It was funny, in a sick, jagged kind of way, how fast a family that could not be bothered to remember your birthday could suddenly find the energy to form a lynch mob the second you did something without asking their permission. When I finally switched the phone back on an hour later, it was like opening a floodgate that had been waiting to drown me. Text after text after text, each one angrier than the last, each one dripping with a kind of offended entitlement that might have made me laugh if it had not been so familiar and exhausting. Mom's name was the first to flash across the screen, her messages stacking one after another like furious dominoes toppling over each other. Why didn't you tell us you bought a house? That's family property, not just yours. One of them shrieked in all caps, the word family somehow managing to feel like both a weapon and a curse when she used it that way, as if blood ties gave her an automatic claim to anything good that might have accidentally fallen into my lap. Another text came right after, almost breathless with outrage, We could have all enjoyed it if you had just talked to us first, as if I owed them the spoils of my silence and sacrifices. As if the years of being forgotten and overlooked were just small clerical errors we should now all politely overlook in the name of togetherness. Jason was no better, of course, because why waste a golden opportunity to kick your sister when she was finally standing up on her own 2 feet? His message came with the same smug superiority that had oozed off him since we were kids, back when he would shove me off the swings and claim I had just fallen weird while Mom and Dad patted him on the back for being such a good boy. Real mature, sis. Flexing for strangers like you're some kind of big shot now, he wrote, followed by one of those sarcastic little thumbs-up emojis he always used when he wanted to make sure you knew just how much he despised you without actually saying the words. Then there was Dad, Ron the Peacemaker, always pretending to be the voice of reason while quietly stacking the deck in Jason's favor behind closed doors. His message was shorter, colder, a sharp blade tucked inside a velvet glove. Guess money changes people, he said. Like the irony of that statement wouldn't have knocked me flat if I had not already been used to the way he twisted the knife without ever raising his voice. I stared at the screen until the words blurred together, until my breath came in short, shallow bursts that tasted like smoke and regret, until the old familiar ache of not being enough, never being enough, threatened to rise up and drown me all over again. And then, with a calmness that felt foreign and almost clinical, I typed back exactly 4 words. You have no idea. That was it. No explanations. No apologies. No justifications for daring to carve out a tiny piece of happiness for myself without first seeking their approval like a child begging for permission to stay out past curfew. I hit send and watched the message slip into the ether, a tiny, defiant flare shot up against a sky that had never once bothered to light up for me. But they were not done, not by a long shot. Within minutes, a new wave of messages crashed into my inbox, full of demands and guilt trips and veiled threats disguised as invitations. You need to let us come up for a family weekend, Mom wrote, like it was already a done deal, like I would be expected to roll out the red carpet and polish the doorknobs for the people who had made damn sure I never felt like I belonged anywhere. We deserve to celebrate this together, Jason added, the arrogance so thick I could practically feel it oozing through the screen. They talked about booking the weekend after next, about bringing food and board games and kids and dogs, about turning my hard-earned peace into yet another chaotic circus where I would once again be expected to play hostess, peacekeeper, and scapegoat all rolled into one. It was not even a request. It was an expectation, set in stone. The way it had always been, my accomplishments were community property if they noticed them at all, but my failures were mine alone to carry. I sat there for a long time, staring out the window at the thinning light, the slow creep of dusk staining the edges of the sky, the city grinding itself into the night with a weariness that felt too close to home. I thought about all the birthdays spent watching Jason blow out candles, all the graduations where they cheered louder for him even when it was my name called. I thought about every moment I had bitten my tongue bloody to keep the peace that never really included me anyway. Then I picked up the phone one last time and typed out my answer, simple and clean, no room for argument or misinterpretation. Don't bother. The gate will be locked. I hit send, turned the phone face down on the table, and poured myself another glass of the cheap wine, the kind that tasted like regret but burned good and clean going down. Outside, somewhere in the distance, I could hear the faint hum of laughter rising from some neighbor's window, warm and real and meant for someone who mattered. I did not feel guilty. Not one bit. Because for the first time in my life, I was not going to open the door just to be forgotten inside the house. The morning they decided to show up uninvited dawned gray and heavy with the kind of humidity that made your skin feel sticky before you even stepped outside. The kind of day when the lake looked more like melted pewter than water. Slow and thick and unmoving under a sky that could not decide whether it wanted to rain or just smother you with its weight. I had not been warned, not officially, but the tone of the texts from the day before had been clear enough, full of that heavy, righteous assumption that they could barge into my life like it was still theirs to invade, Like showing up at my door was not a violation, but a right they had somehow earned through nothing more than sharing a little DNA with me. I knew at the moment I heard the low rumble of tires crunching over gravel, the lazy whine of an overworked engine dragging itself up the long dirt road that twisted from the main highway to the lakefront, that someone was coming who had no business being here. The coffee in my cup was still steaming, fresh and black and strong enough to scrape the sleep from behind my eyes, and I took a long, slow sip as I moved to the front window, staying just behind the thin linen curtain, watching without being seen, a ghost in my own home. The gate was a cheap chain-link thing I had padlocked 2 days ago more out of habit than expectation, a rusted barrier barely worth the effort it took to slam it shut. But that morning, it became something more. It became a wall, a statement, a quiet line drawn in the sand that I had never dared draw before. And when I saw them parked there, the two familiar gray SUV with Dad's dented bumper and Mom's vanity plate screaming blessed in pastel cursive, I knew that locking it had been the best damn decision I had ever made. They did not get out of the car right away, probably confused, probably assuming that there had been some mistake, that surely I would come running out with keys jangling and apologies spilling from my mouth like loose change. I watched Jason's truck pull in behind them, newer and shinier, still proudly sporting the dealership tag, because God forbid he go a week without flashing something new under everyone's noses. For a moment, there was nothing but the idling engines, the awkward dance of brake lights flickering as they shuffled and repositioned on the narrow drive like oversized beetles trying to right themselves. Then Mom climbed out, still wearing her Sunday best even though it was a Wednesday, her arms crossed tight over her chest like armor, her mouth already drawn into that thin hard line she got whenever she thought someone had embarrassed her. She rattled the gate once, twice, called my name into the trees like I was some naughty child hiding in the bushes after a tantrum. I sipped my coffee and said nothing, standing motionless behind the curtain, feeling my heart slam slow and heavy against my ribs, but not backing down, not this time. Jason got out next, stomping around like a bull who had spotted a red flag, pulling at the lock like he thought sheer indignation could snap steel. I could hear the faint echo of his voice even through the thick summer air, something about unbelievable and after everything we've done, which might have been funny if it had not been so bitter, so soaked through with that same old poison I had been swallowing for years. Dad stayed in the car longer, staring out over the dashboard like he was surveying a battlefield he was too tired to charge into, and for a brief, stupid second I almost felt sorry for him. Sitting there weighed down by the family he helped build and the daughter he never really bothered to know. But the moment passed, sharp and clean, and I let it go without a funeral. They stood there for a while, talking among themselves, gesturing wildly, probably arguing about whether they should call me, threaten me, guilt me, maybe even just drive through the damn gate if they thought they could manage it. I finished my coffee in 3 long slow sips, rinsed the mug in the sink, and made myself another pot, moving through the kitchen with the slow, deliberate calm of someone who had nothing left to fear from the people outside the fence. From the deck, hidden just enough by the thick tangle of trees at the edge of the clearing, I watched them finally give up the pretense of civility. Mom pacing back and forth with her phone glued to her ear, Jason kicking a rock so hard it pinged off the gate with a dull metallic clang, Dad finally stepping out and saying something sharp that made Mom turn on him with fire in her eyes. It was like watching a play I had seen 100 times before, only this time I was not trapped in the front row, pretending to enjoy the show. They thought I owed them a piece of me. What they never realized was that I owed myself everything they never gave. The shouting started to die down after about an hour, the kind of slow surrender that comes when even the most stubborn people realize they are not getting what they want. One by one, they climbed back into their vehicles, slamming doors harder than necessary, engines revving a little louder than needed, trying to scrape together whatever dignity they could salvage from the wreckage of their failed ambush. I watched them reverse down the gravel drive, the dust rising in lazy clouds behind their tires, fading into the trees like ghosts finally admitting they were dead. I did not wave. I did not step out onto the porch. I did not even open the damn gate. The driveway stayed empty after that. And for once, I felt full.